Yeah, lecture 7. Let's do this right away. Okay, so we are continuing this conversation of the filters. By the way, can you help me to remember something? Like I wrote some things in the... I added some concepts here. This is to help you to prepare for this little... Hi, Priet. Priet, good to see you. This is to help you to prepare for that little quiz I will make. Did I added something else that is not there? Somebody took a photo of that. I think it was Lisa. Anyways, if you... I will ask Lisa, and I will just make sure that all the concepts that I'm going to ask you in the quiz are in here. I mean, I personally am that kind of teacher who is like, I give you all the answers, because I mean, your life doesn't depend on this, and you being a musician doesn't depend on this. So that's why I'm so soft about it. So that's kind of like everything that is going to be in the quiz. So you can prepare it. And I think I still haven't decided exactly if it's going to be next week or the week after. Like maybe I'll give another week. Just why not? Like we will have another lecture next week, and I'll decide this today. Like today, you will know this. And I think that the thing that we're going to do in the class today, I think I'm going to put it in Google Classroom, so you can send it to me. But anyways, let's for now go and start. We're in the same place, discussing why EQs are there, think about different filters and EQs, how to change the spectral balance directly, and let's make an experiment. Hooray! So that's where we are today. So I was telling you that, yeah, I want these concepts. I want to like make this good list of concepts so you can kind of recap. But yeah, we are going to talk, I mean, we have talked about musical balance, spectral balance, what does linearity means. We have discussed equalizer, we have discussed band, we have discussed crossover frequency, bandwidth, Q control, we have discussed harmonics, and also I'm going to add here, because I'm remembering as I go, we also discussed types of filters, right? Very simple, but, and it's very humble. It's kind of like, you know, have you seen Karate Kid? You know this famous old movie? Like, you know this movie? No? So this lecture is a lot like right hand, left hand kind of moment. You know, it's like this set of lectures. It's very, very back to basics, basic training kind of thing. So back to the EQ world. So, I mean, I'm kind of like seeing, this is a summary slide, kind of seeing the same thing we saw, but from another point of view. So, okay, EQs have the function of boosting or removing frequencies from a signal, obvious. Okay, now I'm getting a bit more kind of like technical, and I wouldn't say technical, but more like into the use of equalizers a little bit, and how do I see it like that? And you see, I see they are used to create separation between the different elements in a mix. Because, I mean, everything is competing for the frequencies that are there. It's a competition for... That's interesting. Let's see if you can give me a good answer here. What is a competition for? There's a competition happening when you're doing some audio work. Like, what is a competition for? What are you competing for? So comparison for frequencies, that's what you wanted to say, kind of, Sebastian? You heard what Grisha said? Yeah, so can you say, Grisha said different instruments competing for different frequencies. What do you... Mm-hmm. Yep. Element? Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. All your answers are good. I mean, there is not a right answer. I just wanted to tell you something that how I think, which can help you. We're competing for the attention of the listener. You see? It's kind of like the listener is there. It's just like boost of things, and then you're like, what should I listen to now? Ah, okay, the synth. Ah, look, the synth is there. Great, I heard it. Fine, I found it. You know, and so to do this, we do corrective equalizing or enhancive equalizer. What do you think could be the difference between these two things? Like, it's just two types of procedures. And in sound engineering, everything is super stupid because everything has this like fancy names, but it's really like super like obvious stuff. Like, so you either correct or enhance. What do you think it would be the difference between correcting and enhancing? Yeah, excellent, excellent. Yeah, cut or boost. Basically, cut or boost. Like, that's it. You either cut or you either boost. So, and then, well, obviously EQs have curves. We discussed this already. You can kind of categorize them in shelves and bells. I mean, it's like the easiest way to categorize them. Like, you can see the low pass and the high pass as a shelf, and you can also see the bell as a band pass. I mean, it's just a sophisticated band pass, you know. This is like, I mean, last week we were seeing it, or Monday, sorry, we were seeing it super, like, theoretically and basic. This is a more practical way of seeing it. Just like, okay, look, guys, like what we have is shelves, bells. We can modify the shelf to be a low pass filter or a high pass filter, and a bell curve is kind of like a band pass in the end, and that's kind of all we are thinking about. So we talked as well about something called parametric and semi-parametric EQs. So, like, this guy is the same as your EQ in your DAW. It's exactly the same as this EQ. These two guys are the same. Because the only thing that makes a parametric EQ parametric is the Q. The fact that you can change the Q. So this guy is just like your Ableton EQ. It's just like you don't have a graphic. And when I was telling you that this guy, George Massenburg, in the 70s, he was saying like, oh, this is called a parametric equalizer. Like, obviously he didn't have access to Ableton EQ. He was talking about this guy. And you see, like, I mean, when I have an EQ like this, it's maybe, who of you feels comfortable using a guy like this? Nobody. You. Okay. Nobody feels, maybe a bit. You a bit. Like, I mean, sorry? You like the sound. So I mean, the key here obviously is to identify that there is a cue. So you're going to have to create you have to use, you know, your GPU. You know what is a GPU, right? Everybody knows what is a GPU? In computer, it's like the video card. So you have to use the video card in your head when you're doing this, and then you have to imagine, you have to render a graph in your head, like, okay, like I'm imagining that this graph. Yeah, because you don't have a graph, so you have to use your ears. And that's actually kind of what I like about this type of EQs, that it's sort of like, there is a sensory deprivation happening, and then I cannot see what's going on, but I can hear it more attentively. I don't know. The more you hear, the more you hear. That sounds very stupid, what I just said, but it's really true. Like, I mean, I'm in a moment right now. Maybe it's, I bought a new sound card, by the way, like absolute new sound card. I changed all my monitoring system on Monday. After 7 years, it was really interesting. It was like super big change in my life, to be honest. So I have an Antelope Audio Send Go now, and I got rid of my, I'm selling my Neve, and I got rid of my old sound card, which was an Antelope Audio too. And my sound card has a huge headroom. What that means is that there are a lot of steps from 0 to maximum level. That's kind of the best way to see it. And man, like I can hear 1 decibel changes like very well, very well. It's really interesting. Like I mean, I don't know if it's the resolution of the system, or if it's that my ears are becoming more acute because of the because of the technical ear development course, which is so successful. But I don't know. Anyways. Going back to this, you know, you have a cue control for each band. You see, now you can engage with the cues a bit more professionally. It's like band 1, band 2, band 3, band 4, and you have cue controls for each band. And that cue control is actually modifiable, so it becomes a parametrical EQ. There is something called a semi-parametric EQ, which is it's an EQ that has all of these, but no cue control. So you can change the frequency, you can change you can say the central frequency, for example. You can, yeah, that's what you're doing here. You can boost it or cut it, and then you can do, you see this guy actually, that's why I got confused for a second. This guy has 5 bands, actually, because it has a high-pass filter, you see? So band 1, band 2, band 3, band 4, band 5. So, cool. So when you have a parametric equalizer, the parameters that you can change are gain, so just boosting or cut, frequency, choosing your frequency, and Q, it's kind of the bandwidth of the EQ. We discussed it last week. I got a bit, on Monday, I got a bit confused in the calculation, and I did my homework, and so I prepared some slides for that today, and we will see it. And in the little quiz that I will give you, you will have to calculate the Q for something, you know. It's really simple. Like, if you know how to use your phone calculator, you can do that. And, I mean, if you see, like, usually Q in equalizers like this one that you see here, this GSX L4070, you don't see a number in the queue. You don't see like number 5, number 7, number 1. So that's a bit abstract thing, but you will see today that we will kind of like have a range of values to use for the queue that are recommended and that we should be working with them, kind of. So, okay. It tells me which or how many other frequencies nearby the center frequency will be affected. So it's kind of like, you know, when I'm sorry to use such a dark example, when a nuclear bomb explodes, it's kind of like how many kilometers around the explosion of the nuclear bomb gets destroyed. You know, that's the Q factor of the nuclear bomb, something like that. I mean, whatever. I don't know why, but that's a case that comes to my mind. But it works, yeah. There's a question. Have changeable Q, yes. Semi-parametric, they have a fixed Q. It's the cool thing of this, yes, it's a special thing of the parametric equalizer. No, that's a graph equalizer. That's a graph equalizer. Because the difference between a semi-parametric and a graphic equalizer is that in the semi-parametric, you can choose the frequency. When the graphic equalizer, you have those frequencies that are given to you, like what you just showed me there. Like, let's just go here. If you go to Google image search, like, or any image search engine, and you just write like graphic equalizer, you're always going to get those little lines there. Like, you see? These are just graphic equalizers. And the difference, you see, like when you see an EQ like this, and actually this is also a graphic equalizer. It's just like all the Qs are fixed. And he's showing you a graph. It's very confusing. It's like, but it has a graph. Like, yeah, there is a graphic equalizer in this black case. And actually, it would be wise of me to, in that black case, it would be wise of me to, no, it's okay, bro. Don't worry, chill. Or maybe, yes, I'll accept your help. Yeah, why not? I mean, let's just open this door. Yeah, you see, there's a graphic equalizer. And it would be wise of me to connect it and use it, but it's here. Like, why not? I mean, I don't know if I'm going to do this today because I don't know the setup, but it would be easy. Like, maybe in one of the lectures, we really should do it. So what's happening here, you see, for those of you who are online, I'm sorry, I know you cannot see so well, but there are fixed frequencies, and they are those frequencies that I told you last week, on Monday. Like 25, 31. I'm going to take a photo. Well, if I could have my phone, and show it on the screen. So actually, so then Slava doesn't have to hold this thing, and then everybody online can also see what we're seeing. Yeah. Let me close this back, and I think this is from Sergei Praskuryakov. And there is also a compressor here. There are 2 compressors, and there is a patch bay. And I wanted really, and there is a reverb unit. I need to find out who is this because I really wanted the school to buy this. I made the budget for things like this, so you guys can have like analog, analog racks practice. Yeah, I had this discussion with the school in a point, but it never came to fruition. Let me send this to myself so I can show it here. So let's go save to messages and go here and attach and then send it, and then I can show you. So for those of you who are online, what we were watching right now is this thing. So what we're watching right now is this thing. So yeah, I mean, that's a graphic equalizer. And what happens here is, like, you see, I cannot choose the frequency. He's telling me what frequencies are there. I cannot choose the Q factor as well. So it is how it is. Great, so let's move on. And then in a semi-parametric EQ, I can choose the frequency, but I cannot change the Q. So if I have a high Q value, like, I'm suspicious of what I wrote there. Because, yeah, this is an old slide. And I think it's exactly the opposite. I disagree with myself. This is exactly the opposite. It's like, yeah, it's like a high Q value. It's a wide bandwidth, and a low Q value is a narrow bandwidth. We're going to see it now in a minute. So sorry, mistakes from the past. So okay, when we are seeing when we're seeing like a cue, I mean, you know, you usually find yourself in a situation like this in which you can make maybe a very chirurgical cut or maybe a very wide cut, you know, and what you really are controlling is the bandwidth in the end, you know, meaning how many frequencies are going to be affected by your process. So, look, the narrower the cue, the narrower the cue, the less frequencies are affected because the cue is smaller. The wider the cue, the more frequencies are affected. That's obvious. Let's move on. So, the cue control is found in fully parametric equalizers and in some mixers and most digital ones. So the cue control is actually called for quality. It's like the quality control. And it represents the width of the frequency range that the EQ is going to affect. So the cue control, it's actually a ratio that it's the center frequency that you choose divided by the frequency range affected. So I was right last week on Monday. I don't know why I got confused because the formula is correct and everything was cool. So I have the center frequency that I chose, 500, divided by the bandwidth. So it's going to be, let's say, that only 50 hertz are affected. So what's the Q? 10, sorry. So if I have a center frequency of 500 hertz, that only affects a bandwidth that's 50 hertz wide, then I have a Q factor of 10. So if you set the Q control at 10, it will affect a very narrow, let me just correct that, very narrow range. Oh, so many typos today. Narrow range, let me accept this. Oops, Alice. So if I have a center frequency of 500 and I have a Q of 10, I'm going to affect a range of 50 hertz. So if you set a Q control to 10, it will affect a very narrow range of frequencies. And if you have a center frequency of 5,000, for example, and the bandwidth is 10,000 hertz, the Q will be 0.5. So let's just see these calculations in text edit just quickly. So I have like the Q equals the center frequency divided by the bandwidth. I'm going to make this higher, bigger, sorry. So in the first case, I said, okay, the center frequency is 500, and the bandwidth is 50. So, you know, you just have to perform the calculation, 500 over 50, and this gives you 10. Now, of course, that means that if I have, usually you don't know the bandwidth, because the EQs don't tell you this. So if I go to Ableton Live and I open this, what we're usually kind of doing, and I was meditating about this a lot, and I think that what got me confused the other day is that Ableton visual representation is actually not accurate. It's just kind of showing you what's going on, but I think that what was confusing me on the other lecture is that I think that Ableton is really not showing you the real deal. And actually we can compare this with Pro Tools because I brought my iLog today to open Pro Tools here if we need to. So let me go here and open an EQ. Channel EQ, let me open EQ8, and let's do that same case. So I'm going to switch off all the bands, right? Goodbye bands. Let's just leave one. And let's go here and say, okay, I wanted to do 500 hertz, and I wanted the Q to be 10. So you see, it's a very narrow EQ. So now, very narrow Q. So I can do this. I can calculate it backwards. You know, I see it. Yeah, sure. So what I wanted to see last week and on Monday. Fuck, why am I thinking it's last week? So what I wanted to check is like this thing has to be 500 hertz, but it isn't. You see, like this thing should be from, let's say, 387 to 887, but it's kind of like visually not like that. So no, but I mean like there shouldn't be like the amount of frequencies that are affected. So it should be just 500. It should be 50. Actually, it should be only 50 hertz. I think it's just like it's visually not accurate. And I mean, and that's okay. I don't think that they have to be visually accurate because, I mean, I always think when I'm criticizing an engineer who did something else, I'm like, okay, do you know how to write graphical interfaces? No, so shut the fuck up. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, who knows what are the problems that this guy's faced? For curiosity, I want to connect Pro Tools here and see see what do we get there. So I just plugged my iLok there, and I'm gonna just open Pro Tools to see if Pro Tools can show us like a bit of a better graphic interface. I don't think so, because I mean, I guess that it's a challenge to represent these things visually, and that's why I was confused, because last week, on Monday, I had like a bandwidth of 1000 hertz, theoretically. Do you understand? When I say this, you should already understand what I mean. If I say I have a bandwidth of 1000 hertz, like, do you understand what I mean, I think you do, and I think you do, but I got the I got more songwritery people here, so you know them songwriters. So I mean, I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. Like if I say the bandwidth of 1000 hertz, Lena, sorry that I sing you out. What do you think it means? You don't know. Sure, sure. That's why we're in a lecture. And I know, guys, that some people, this is like not so high priority information, because I mean, it's like maybe for them, music theory is not so high priority information. It's not. It's fine. It's really fine. But I get paid to make sure that you learn things. So I'm gonna learn the hell out of those things to you. So I mean, imagine this. Remember the example I just said about the nuclear bomb? It's unforgettable, right? Impossible to forget. So imagine this. Okay, this is let's not put it in the context of a city, because we don't want to kill anybody, but we're making a nuclear test in, what's the name of this? Novosibirsk island in the north of Russia. There is a place called Novosibirsk, by the way. Do you know this? Novosibirsk, sorry, you're right. Which, by the way, it's kind of like, I once was checking it out, and it's 7 times the size of Israel. I mean, it's just like Russia, so it's brutally big. It's like you can fit 7 Israels there, and it's like, whatever, no, let's just make a nuclear bomb explosion there. That's where they test the nuclear bombs. So you have there Novosibirsk island, and you blow up a nuclear bomb here. So, you know, nuclear bomb has a radius, right? Like of how much kilometers get destroyed. So that thing is going to be from the explosion all the way. Let's say that there is like a little house here that was built for fishermen for when there are no nuclear explosions there. And the house is just exactly in the place where the effect of the bomb ends. So the house will not be affected by it, right? I mean the wave of expansion, the blast wave. I don't mean the radiation, like the I mean just the blast wave. This lecture became a nuclear theory. Cool. Ah, yeah? Nice. I want to see it. So. Uh-huh.
Every time, even if I drop a very small, tiny bomb, my house just gets.
So, man, you gotta. I think you gotta change your residence location, brother. So, so anyways, let's say that the amount of kilometers that get destroyed by the blast wave is 10 kilometers. Okay, so that's the bandwidth of the explosion. It's like how many kilometers around get damaged by the explosion. So the bandwidth of the EQ is how many frequencies get affected by the explosion by the EQ. So let's say that you grab an EQ and you're like, hey, I want to make a change. I mean, let's put it in the context more not of a sound engineer, but of you like as a songwriter. You're in your house and you're making, no, it's cool. You don't have to know it at the same level as me, because that's not your goal of life. So you're like, I feel that my vocals needs a bit more low end. Have you sometimes done change something in an EQ like that? Okay, so you choose a frequency and you kind of like do it visually. You're looking at this and you're like, I think that the low end is more to the left. I guess that's how you think. I mean, you don't think like, I need to boost 250 hertz, right? You feel more like, okay, I need to make a change here on the left, something like that. And so I'm gonna make a little mountain there, right? That's kind of how you work. Am I right? What do you mean kind of? It means that you repeat what I said like in another lecture. You go, okay, that's fine. Ah. But I mean, I'm curious to see, for example, have you ever used an EQ in your life? So how do? You just like see like a left and right thing, and you kind of like think that left is low, right is high. Yeah, and then you move a little bit to the right, and then you make an off, like turn it up, and then when you do that, it makes like a little mountain, right? Yep. Okay. So the bandwidth is how many hertz are happening in between here and here. Just like the explosion radius, you know, so, but the explosion radius is measured in kilometers, but there is no centimeters or meters here. So what is here is frequencies. So let's say that you chose this frequency and that was like 250. You don't know that, you don't care, you're just a user and you just want the vocals to have more low end, so you just did like, and then a little mountain built, and that mountain has a center of 250 hertz. But that mountain has a bit of other frequencies that are affected on the left of it and on the right of it. So maybe that mountain starts on 50 hertz and it ends in 500. So it means that not only 250 gets affected, all of this gets affected. So how much gets affected? Well, it between 500 and 50. So how many frequencies are there? 450 frequencies are inside there. So that's the bandwidth of this thing. Now, what I'm telling you is that some EQs, well, that all EQs have, not all EQs, parametric EQs have this factor that you can change, which makes that mountain smaller. So imagine that when you drop the atomic bomb, as the atomic bomb is falling in the sky, you can be like, oh no, Sebastian is there and I don't want Sebastian to die. So I'm going to make the effect of the nuclear bomb to be narrower, sorry, so we save Sebastian there and he's all right. And so you change the Q factor of the bomb, and then when the bomb... Anyways, but okay, at least you can have like 2 more weeks or something. Like, so, so I mean, as the bomb is falling, you change the Q factor of the bomb, and then when the bomb explodes, it will not affect 10 kilometers, but 1 kilometer only. So wouldn't it be nice if you can control that? I mean, it would be a nicer nuclear explosion, right? I mean, more humane nuclear explosion. So anyways, let me see what I'm checking out now, Liana, so you know what is my question. It's like, you see, look at what we were discussing. Like, let's see. Okay, I am Liana. It's like 2 a.m. in the morning, and I'm like, I want to EQ something, and I don't care. It's not that I don't understand. It's like I don't want to add more information to my brain that I don't need. So that's how I see it, because, I mean, you know, I don't care about how a shirt is stitched. You know, I really don't need to learn how a shirt is stitched. It's just not my desire to learn. So I see it the same way as you. It's like, you just want this to work. So you just go here and you're like, I think that I want the vocals to be a bit more fat, you know. Okay, that's what you do, right? Something like this. Now, if you look at this, you are affecting 152 hertz. And the equalizer is telling you how many other frequencies are getting affected too, by telling you the Q. The equalizer is kind of saying, hey man, like look, the explosion radius will be affected, will be 10 kilometers. Well, the amount of frequencies that will be affected will be X. So in this case, I have the following situation. I have a center frequency of 152 hertz. That's what I chose there. And I didn't even touch the EQ. Actually, to make it more precise of how the example actually is, I'm going to just get it to factory settings and start it again because I chose the Q. So I'm going to switch off all the bands that I don't need. So we focus on one. And then I'm going to grab, yeah, that's weird. But anyways, I'm going to grab this guy and just boost it here. What was the frequency? 100. And the Q was 0.71. So the Q that Ableton got me by default was 0.71. So what I just told you is a formula to calculate the Q. So the formula to calculate the Q is the central frequency, so what frequency I chose, divided by a number called the bandwidth, which now you know what it is. It's like the range of frequencies that will be affected. So in this case, I told you it was 450. So in that case, but I have a situation now which is interesting, which is like I know the central frequency, I know the Q, but I don't know the bandwidth, and because Leo is asking me, and it's a pain in the ass that Leo is asking me, and I don't care, but I have to answer this question, because if not, I'm going to get a bad grade in a little quiz. I need to calculate the bandwidth, so I will have to perform a basic mathematical operation. I hope that you remember that if I have something here, I can move it here, and then I can move this thing out here, right? So I have bandwidth equals the central frequency divided by the Q. So that is, let's calculate it, 150. Let me open here the calculator. That is 150 divided by 0.71, right? So that's telling me 211 hertz. So that means that from 150 down, there would be a range of 211 hertz that will be affected. So that means that frequencies that are above 150 are going to get affected, and frequencies that are below 150 are going to get affected. This matters a lot. It matters a lot, because the difference between a person who knows how to mix and a person who doesn't know how to mix is that the person who doesn't know how to mix performs operations that affect regions of the spectrum that shouldn't be touched. And then you end up with kasha. That's why people end up with kasha, because, I mean, what is kasha? It's like a lot of things that shouldn't be together put together. When we say that's kasha, that's what we mean in Russian, right? Like, I mean, not only the food, but you know what I mean. It's a lot of things that shouldn't be together. It's this one, the one that you chose. This guy. The size of the mountain, like how fat the mountain is. The bandwidth, he doesn't tell this to you. Because, I mean, because the equalizer, you know, when you're an engineer, you're trying to save yourself processing power, time, everything. So I don't need to show you the bandwidth here, because if I show you these two factors, I'm already telling you the bandwidth indirectly. Yeah. Yeah, it is a ratio. So I mean, in mathematical ratios, maybe you know, but just in case I explain it, like, for example, let's say that I bought 4 Coca-Colas and 2 Pepsis. So for every Pepsi I have 2 Coca-Colas, right? Do you feel this? So that's a ratio. So in here, I'm kind of saying something that is very abstract and that we will not feel so strongly. And I even don't feel myself comfortable to explain this ratio. I'm going to kind of fall apart, but I'm going to give you an attempt to tell you what 1 would mean, something like that. Let's try to think about it, because if we think about what the value 1 would mean here, maybe we can get to a conclusion of what that means. So 1, and I would have the central frequency over the bandwidth. So let me think about that. So if I have a Q of 1 and my center frequency is 100, so, and I have 1 and I have the bandwidth. So if I clear the bandwidth here, it means that the bandwidth equals the center's frequency. So I would have, I know that I'm making some abstraction here. I'll explain you. I'm thinking out loud, like I'm not explaining something yet. So I have the bandwidth and the central frequency are equal when the Q factor is 1. So what can that mean? That for every hertz that I am trying to affect, yeah, I got it. When the Q factor would be something like 1, and I'm choosing 1, so it's a simple number that we can grasp. What's happening is that for every hertz I'm trying to boost, 1 hertz will be boosted on each side. So I will make a little mountain that is like 1 hertz in the central frequency, and it will start from 2 and it goes to 3. So it's like 1 and 1. Yeah, on each side, correct. When it's 0.71, it's like for every hertz I'm trying to change, I'm going to affect 0.71 hertz to both sides. It's a very rough estimate, and I don't think that it's the, if you were an engineer trying to design gear, you will fail if you apply what I just told you, but it's a good approach for a person who is mixing. What we need to know, like, and you know what, I realize this, I don't know if in Russia people do this, I hate so much in the Anglo world, there are all these Twitter posts and blog posts, which is like, what you need to know about equalizers. Like, who are you to tell me what I need to know, man? Like, shut the fuck up, you know? Tell me. The gain? What do you mean? In here? Like, why I don't care about the gain? Good question. It's a great question. Because the Q factor and the gain are not really related, you know. It's actually like, I mean, like, the gain will determine. Okay, let's look at it like this. Let's say that you have the Himalayas mountain, okay? So the Himalayas mountain is like 8,200 meters tall, something like that, and I have no freaking idea how long it is. So I am only talking about the length of the mountain here. because the tallness of the mountain is determined by the gain. But if you see, like, if let's say that it's just like we cannot visually see it because the representation is not so good in the screen, but if I make a boost of the minimum decibel that you can think of, 0.0000 decibels, whatever, the width of the mountain will still be the same. It's just like the height of the mountain is going to change. So these two concepts are not connected to each other, like Q and gain. I mean, they are in some form, because obviously, I mean, when I increase the gain, then I get like, you know, different frequencies get affected more than others. So, but what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the Q factor is kind of like how long the mountain is, basically. So I don't think that I successfully explained that, and I don't think that it was a good explanation, but that's the best I can do for now. Now, for curiosity, my problem is, you see, look at how bad this equalizer representation is. And that's one of the reasons why engineers don't like to use Ableton for mixing, for example, because we want precise things. Like this bandwidth is 200 hertz, but the EQ is showing me a bandwidth like of who knows how many millions of hertz there. You see what I mean? Like, according to this thing, the bandwidth is like from 28 hertz all the way to, to 700. And I should have a 200 hertz bandwidth, you know, and that's kind of confusing to me. Let me see. I don't even think that the Pro Tools one is going to be more accurate. I think that it's just a fishka of graphic equalizer, or of parametric equalizer, so we can see what the hell is happening. EQ tests. So let me just see this here and just load any track here. It can be mono, I don't care. And I'm just going to load the EQ, the stock EQ of... if a filter appears here, by the way. It doesn't appear in Ableton. That's interesting. So I touch here, and now you see I get the same parameters, the same things that I have in the EQ of Ableton. And that's the thing that I want you also to... I mean, if my relationship with you as a I don't even like to use the word teacher, like as a bro who has been doing this for a long time, is that when you get out of this school and you go to the, I mean, I also don't like to say that when you get out of school and you go to the workplace, it's like, come on, like you're already in the workplace, like whatever. But what I want you is to be able to sit down on every system and be able to work. That's what I mean. That it's not like I can only work in Ableton. It's like, I don't think, it was, I'm trying to remember if it was to your course. It was to your course? No. In the last year, I did this lecture one. It was a cool one. It was like I put a challenge to myself, and I told the students, choose a DAW I have never used, and I will make a song on it in front of you. Like, and we did it. Like, I opened a DAW that I have never seen in my life. It was Beat Week in that moment. And we made a song. So, I mean, I want you to open any EQ and just be like, oh, look, there's a Q. I know what that means. Oh, there's a frequency. That's a center frequency. Oh, there's a gain. Great. It's all the same. So we were talking about a Q factor of 0.71, and we were talking about the frequency 1000. So let's see how they represent it. Also, it's like brutal here. It's like I have, well, let's see, from 110 hertz, I get 76 hertz, and all the way to 9,000. So it's even worse. Visual representation. But it's how it is. It's what I get. That's why I got confused last time. Maybe, no, I mean that maybe this matters. Wait, yeah, this matters a lot. The decibels per octave. So that's kind of related to your question. Very much. Yeah, I know that I'm confusing you, and I know that I'm not being successful, but this matters a lot, and I just don't have that control in Ableton EQ, but that matters a lot. It's like how many decibels for each octave. I'm not going to get there right now, because I'm going to confuse us. But the range here, it tells me is from, I was in 1000, it's from 300 to 2500. So, yeah. You see, like, if I put the gain, Liana, this is what I was trying to tell you. If I put the gain super low, this thing doesn't change anyways. Now, what I'm confused is that this thing should show me 200 hertz only. That's why I'm kind of confused. And I was confused last week, and I don't think, on Monday, and I don't think I'm still clearing this question, because I don't believe that these designers of EQs are so stupid, like, not to do it well. Like, I just don't believe that. In my understanding, we just calculated it. The answer that we got was the bandwidth was 450. It was 450, right? The bandwidth that we calculated. No, it was 211. Yeah. It's not at like 5,000 or something. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm confusing, because I'm sure of what I'm telling you of the formula of the calculation of the bandwidth. Maybe I'm interpreting it wrong, but da. Yeah. Let's see. No, I think that he has a point. Let's see. Yeah, I think that he has a point. Thank you. I think that you have a point there, Bratan. I think that you have a point, and I'm clearing my question there most likely. So let's see. This thing should be 211 hertz. So from 52 hertz, you see, I'm still, and if I get it, because I remember in London, I had a teacher from Sweden, and I remember in London, my teacher saying like, when you, he had such a strong Swedish accent, and I really remember him telling me something like, from the frequency center frequency left and right, like I just told to Dasha. So let's have a look. How many hertz are in between 150 and 54? There is only 150. There's 100 hertz. And to the other side, there is 100 hertz. No, you see? Let me change it, yeah, to be 12 decibels. Like, and now it's like this. That just doesn't make sense. I really think that that is just the visual representation that they're giving us. So, because maybe, yeah. Yeah, that's where I'm going, because there is some factor here. Imagine that you are the EQ designer, and there if you are the EQ designer, you have a big problem, which is like, you see, in here there are 30 hertz, but in here there are 3,000 hertz. So how do you represent that visually? You see my point? Like I mean, for us, I really believe that the visualization is just giving me an idea. So also, because if not, the bell will be changing side as I move, you see? Like, if the EQ would be super accurate, sorry, 1 second, I'll give you the word. Then when I move the bell to the right, it should become smaller. Yeah. It's the same, exactly. What did you, you're right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you mean not pro Q but pro equalizers. You mean like, yeah, correct. Let's see another one. That's why there is that equal EQ by Job Massenburg that I told you that I think it's gonna make me have a better representation. Let's see Q8 1 second. I'm curious. Wow, that doesn't look so nadioshna. That's very weird. No, I know why that happened. Wait, let me just because I changed the size of the. I'm gonna, for curiosity, see Q8. By the way, I tell you, oh wow, I tell you a piece of music history. Q8, this Q equalizer web waves was the first commercially available plugin ever. Like it's so old. And it's still the same code. It's just like a different audio interface, a different visual interface. Let me load Q1. Just like, I don't know why it's getting this glitch. Whatever, I'm getting this glitch. So I'm gonna use another EQ. I'm gonna load the Pro Tools stock EQ from. It's made by Waves, the one I showed you now. This is a Pro Tools stock EQ, and yeah, we're gonna have the same problem, I think. Like it's like, okay, let me put the Q. The Q we were saying was 0.71. Yeah, we're gonna have the same problem. I guess that it's impossible to represent it visually. Yeah, and then you have this huge thing, and if I go to 100, the bell remains the same, and that's all. But I'm sure in this case, I really made my research, and I'm sure that if I have a Q of 10, my bandwidth is 50. Like, and that means that 550 hertz will be affected. You see, like I wrote it here. So if I set the Q control at 10, it will affect a very narrow range of frequency, only 50 hertz wide. 25 to one side, actually, Dasha, that's what I remember from my teacher in the school. 25 to one side and 25 to the other. It should be like that. So anyways, I hope that gives us a bit of more clarity about the bandwidth and what it means, the bandwidth in general. I'm seeing that I had a class exercise for you today. It's just like I'm adapting to 1 hour and a half lectures. Was not doing this before. So I think we will run it and I'll leave you this as a homework, okay? Because I'm enjoying this lecture and I think we're we're having a moment here. So okay. Generally, this is important, and this is kind of for the knowledge level where you should be, because you should be at this knowledge level. Like you should know this. Kind of like you should be around 1.5, and that should be your number. Let's put it like that. Like if you see that your Q is more than 1.5, you should rethink your life. You should think about you should think about what you're doing. So let's read this just to get this information out of the way. Using EQ with smaller Q numbers generally sounds better as they don't get too low. What do I mean by that? I just wrote it last night. No, I'm crazy. Wait. I just wrote something really stupid. Too wide. I just want to say wide, but I. No. It's the as long as the as long as the Q value is not so small, you know. Using an EQ with a smaller Q numbers generally sounds better. Let me just write this in a more clear way. But very small Qs are not so great. Can generate artifacts. That's the way to put it. Do you understand what I mean? So when the Q is very small, let's just open Ableton again. When the Q is very small, let's see. Sorry, very large. I get a very narrow EQ. When the Q is very small, I am affecting a lot of frequencies. So I don't want to use it like artifacts, but I want to change it a little bit. Using EQs with a smaller EQ, I'm gonna change right here something which is wide bandwidth, right? I mean, if my Q is small, the bandwidth is really large. You see? So let's just correct that. Using EQs with a smaller Q, wide bandwidth, generally sounds better. I mean that you don't want to have. You will see. I will give you a number, but very small Qs can affect too many frequencies at the same time. That's more clear, right? Is that clear? Using an EQ with a smaller Q, which is a wide bandwidth, generally sounds better. What do you mean? I think it's clear now. Yes. Wide bandwidth is a smaller Q. So if I go here, like you see, I'm in 0.10, and here is 18. So like if I have a large number, it's going to be very narrow, narrow bandwidth. But this is a wide bandwidth. So a good middle balance for an EQ is around 1.5. So you will see why. Let's just put it here and put 1.5. Sorry, Q 1.5. And then let's boost it up. So let me, before I read you why, let me go back to 1000 Hertz here. And let's calculate this quickly with 1.5 to see what do we get. So we have a Q factor of 1.5, and I have a center frequency of 1000. So what's the bandwidth? Let's see that. So I had, I was in 100. So what's the, I kind of want to change it from 1000 just because I think it's going to be easier or more visual. So I'm going to stay in 1000. I will move it there. So I have the bandwidth will be the center frequency divided by 1.5. So how much this is? Can you calculate it? 100 divided by 1.5. You will see why I'm doing this example. Let's see if I hope that the numbers give me what I want. So how much? 66.66666, right? Okay, great. So again, if that you see, firstly, that's kind of like a devilish number, so that's interesting. That's one of the reasons why we use 1.5 Qs. No, that's not, but anyways, if I stand in 100 and I have a Q of 1.5, the amount of frequencies that are going to be affected are roughly an octave. It's like 33 to this side, kind of like, you see, I was in 100. So what is the next octave from 100? it's 200. So the next octave is 200. So if I have a 100 center frequency and I have a 66.66 bandwidth, you know, I'm gonna be working from, it's kind of like, I guess, 44? No, I wanna have a total from 44, let's be rough, okay? From 44 to, no, not to 100, because I wanna have a total area of 66 hertz. So it's kind of like 33 and 33. So it's gonna be from 70 something, 70, let's say 77 to 133, something like that. So if I, you see, if I double, if I would double 77 or 70, how much I get? 140, right? So you see that the octave of 70 is 140, you agree? So when I'm using a 1.5 Q, I have an area here which is close to an octave. And I mean, that's just musically pleasant to the ear. It's useful to work in that level. That's one of the reasons why we work with 1.5 as a Q. Let's see it here. So a good middle balance for EQ is 1.5. This represents roughly an octave, I would say. Roughly an octave. Range centered, centered on the chosen frequency. Is this clear, what I said? Or was it confusing? No answer means bad news, usually. Really? It's all okay? Can I move on? Great. A reasonable range of Q is in between 1 and 4. So that's what I wanted to tell you. Leon, it's like, for somebody at that level of analysis, it's like, what do I need to know? 1 and 4. 4, if, and you need to know this. Bigger, it's kind of like, if you want to try to memorize, to remember this, it's the opposite of the intuition. It's like, the bigger the number is, the more wide it is. And the smaller the number is, the bigger. And you can see this in the formula. Because if I have, you see? Yeah, and also you can see it in the formula because of this. Like if I have a very small number here, you know, the closer this gets to 0, the larger this number is going to become. And the opposite way. So if this is 8, you know, it's going to become smaller. And that's it. Great. So when the factor is larger than 4, you're kind of doing surgery, what we call surgery in sound engineering. So you're removing something in particular because there was a problem. So you see, I told you that there are some consoles and some sound systems that have semi-parametric EQs, which means, what does it mean that it's a semi-parametric EQ? What is the Fishka? I said it like 30 minutes ago. What is the Fishka of a semi-parametric EQ? It's written in the screen. Huh? It has a fixed Q. Exactly. I'm just like engaging together. So, so some consoles that have semi-parametric EQs don't have a variable Q value. So they have a Q preset. And that number, it's kind of usually 1.5. So, hey, now you know this today. When you go to a DTH Studios, for example, and you grab our console, you know, you are going to see that there is no Q factor here. This is a semi-parametric EQ. And that's why the reason I hate this console, personally. Yeah, I had a console. I used to own a console, a really cool one. Let me show you my console. I used to own a TL Audio VTC. This thing, it's a pretty serious piece of gear. And I bought it in Budapest and I shipped it here. And if you see the EQs, let's see if we get a close up to the EQs. TL Audio VTC EQ. So if you see here, this device, so let me get closer. These are the auxiliary sends, these are not the EQs. Let me just get to the EQs. I want to see a channel strip, or maybe if I write channel strip, this is the same. Oh, I miss my console so much, man. I miss it very much. I'll tell you in a second. Yeah, so if you see the equalizer, you're gonna see, let's see if we can get it here. Like this, you see, this is the Q factor down here, like this last button here. It's like gain, center frequency, and Q factor. So in this console, you could make very narrow cuts, and it was really amazing. Why did I sold it? Because it's a tube console, so each channel strip is operated by a tube, and it's super expensive to keep it running. And so I brought a master to repair it once, and he told me, like, if you keep this console, you will make me a millionaire. And I was like, okay. And so I sold it. I lost a lot of money. I bought it like for 9,000 euros, and I sold it kind of like for half the price, something like that. Because it was okay. I mean, it did its job. It was cool for a while, but then we bought that other console because because that console is absolutely super cheap to maintain. Actually, we have never spent 1 ruble maintaining it. And when you're running a studio, that's an important factor. So anyways, cool. This is what you were going to do. I'm going to put it to you as a homework. And then I want to just tell you some other couple of things because it's already 11:45. And so you're going to have to download a file. You're going to cut a minute sample. It's the same file I already gave you once. And you're going to use an EQ to isolate some frequencies. So I want you to isolate 31, 63. One of the reasons why I'm doing that is I want you to feel these frequencies. So you're going to have to make a very narrow cue. And now you know what we're talking about. And then isolate these frequencies. These are the frequencies from that standard that I mentioned the last week. And I want you to show me, please, try to be honest about this. Just don't go and Google what is the low end. I'm curious to see where the low end ends for Liana versus where the low end ends for Vyacheslav. You know, it's just like everybody will have a relative thing because I want us to start seeing that it's not useful to work at that level of analysis, which is like the mid-range kind of the ice cream of the song. It's like, so whatever you call the low end, whatever you call the mid-low end, whatever you call the high-mid range, whatever you call the high range. So let's see how it goes. Okay, I have a couple of more thoughts about EQs that I want to share with you that are really cool. So there are EQs that are, okay, before I move on, are there any questions or comments or ideas or thoughts, or are we cool? Online guys, are you there? Anything there that you may want to say or ask, or everything cool? Okay, cool. Now, look, let's try to make this the most clear possible. So I guess that you have seen that when you're using EQs, if any of you have access to Root Tracker, which I guess that all of you have, I guess that you have some plugins that you have downloaded, or I hopefully bought, but maybe you have downloaded. And let's see, let me open an EQ here. And then you may have noticed that there are different types of EQ. This is one type of EQ. And then let me see another type of EQ. I'm going to load here universal audio. Let me see, VST3, it should be here. Where is the word universal audio? It's not here, so it's going to be in audio units, maybe. Ah, no, in here it says like powered plugins, yeah. So I'm going to open this Neve 1081, for example. I think this is going to be a full channel strip. I just want to have just an EQ. Wait. Well, anyways, there is an EQ here. Or let me open again the Pultec that I love. There is a reason why I'm opening precisely the Pultec. So you have seen like that there is this equalizer. By the way, this is a semi-parametric EQ. Well, no, I have a bandwidth control actually. So no, it is a fully parametric EQ, but it's really weird design. It's actually really weird design. I'm not going to go so much on the details on it. But basically, it explores a thing of sound engineering. This EQ explores a fishka of the sound world, which is like if I grab two bands and I put them together. Let me just grab this and put it here. If I grab two bands and put them together, and I make a boost and a cut in the same frequency, you see what happened? Something happens around the edges when you do a boost and a cut in the same place. It's just about the math of all of this. So that EQ, you see, has a boost and attenuation on the same frequency because it wants you to use this. And that's one of the reasons that makes it so special, because they achieved it very well. So this is a special EQ, and this has, apart from that characteristic that I told you that had boost and attenuation at the same frequency, and then you can choose the frequency here. You see, like this is the central frequency, and this is the Q factor. Now, the Q factor in this EQ, the Q value, it applies to both the higher range and the low range at the same time. It's just like he just gives you the chance to change the Q for both bands You have only one chance to change the Q. You don't have two Q factors. Yet this EQ costs 800,000 rubles if you buy the hardware. But it's just like, it's really special. It's really, really special. And there is a reason why it's so expensive. Because there are kind of, when you're designing hardware EQs, there are kind of two types of EQs. One of them are called passives, and the other one are called active EQs. So what's the difference? It's about how they are built. And so there are models of passive EQs. This is a passive EQs. And there are models of active EQs. The main difference is that active, you have to see it kind of like this. It's like passive EQs are waiting for the signal to arrive to do something to it. They are passive. And it's a metaphorical way I'm putting it. And active EQs are kind of going to the signal to change it. So one of them uses the same signal to make a transformation, and the other one uses electricity to go to the signal and change it. What do I mean by that? Is that one of them, I was like, oh shit, I have blood. and then I thought it was the marker. Okay, cool. One of them uses, do you remember I told you last lecture about resistors, capacitors, and all of those things that are just like filtering the signal? What you were talking about, gamma rays and beta rays, like, I mean, you're running a signal through some components and they get filtered. Most passive EQs work like that. They have some components there that are waiting for the signal to come to them. Most active EQs work by using an electrical manipulation of the signal that is more aggressive. I would call it like that. It's not so passive, like waiting for the signal to come. I know that it's very abstract for us to understand it like that. Okay, cool. So passive EQs tend to be a lot better, but are a lot more expensive to build. So the reason why there are these EQs that are there, you can be sure that they're active EQs, that they're not passive EQs, because they're really more expensive. So passive EQs have passive electronic components. They have very low noise levels. That's why they have very low noise, because they are not kind of like using other like more power to change the signal. They're just kind of waiting for the signal to go through a filter. They're very pleasant sound. They're much more expensive. Their designs are more complicated, and they sound more warm. And the active EQs, they have active electronic components, so transistors, silicon control rectifiers, and stuff like that. And they use something called feedback loops to boost. These are more similar. You remember when I told you, like, hey, you can get the signal out of phase, and then you can remove this thing? That's kind of like one type of EQ design. Do you remember that? We talked a lot about it. If you remember, Roma asked me a lot of questions about it. Yeah. So active EQs kind of more work like that. And then I showed you that, hey, you can also put some resistors that they stop 100 hertz from going through. Passive EQs work more like that. So active EQs use feedback loops. Whenever you see feedback loops, it means that a copy of the signal was made. You see, that's why it's called a feedback loop. It's like a copy of the signal was made, and then something else happened around there. They're low cost and weight, and their active components can make noise and add noise to the signal. So that's why, I mean, you wouldn't see an active equalizer in a great studio. And it's not like I can see all EQs and say, that's an active EQ, that's a passive EQ. No, I have to read about it. But usually the price tells you. Like the price tells you what is an active EQ and what is a passive EQ. Most the modeling EQs that you see in your DAW, these guys is a passive EQ for sure. Like, and if I go and open another EQ here, which is going to be the manly well, because I mean, if you are, yeah, there's a reason why we made active EQs. That's your question, right? Well, if you are, let me think about a case, a good case, and it's really important. If you are poor, exactly. I mean, I wanted to say if you're a famous band, I mean, because a band like Red Hot Chili Peppers, you know, they tour with they fucking have rack units with these EQs on the console, and they take them all over the world, like these guys, but they're millionaires. But if you're like a not such a big band, let's say, I'm trying to think about a level of band that would kind of travel with their own active EQs. It's just cost, basically. You're right. Nothing like about. Yeah, no. It's like, you know, a Lamborghini, it's a lot better car than than a Fiat, but, you know, Fiats are super great because many people can have Fiats. It's just cost. No special thing or nothing. It's just cost. Yes. No, it's just cost, and that's important. It's an important factor. So the other thing I told you is like, yeah, we use EQs to correct. These are some sort of like loose thoughts. We use some EQs to correct. So it's like when we try to restore a sound to improve the frequency response on holes, rooms, or delays, like delete the low end of a reverb or something, like compensate for a bad recording, compensate for a bad mic placement, compensate for a bad performance, you know, make it sound the way it was in the room. Like that's what we mean when we're correcting things. Or to enhance, you know, to make it sound better, to make it sound different, to help instruments to blend each other, to create dynamics in music. Sometimes I do this a lot. It's like in the prepiev, I open the high frequencies of the overheads, for example. Like the overheads are some microphones that are on top of the drum kit. And so maybe I put an EQ in the couplet, you know, that is closing the overheads. So the Tarielki don't feel so harsh. And then when the couplet comes, the prepiev comes, sorry, I open that. So that's why it says to create dynamics in music. You don't create dynamics only by using a compressor. You can also create dynamics by using EQs and to make interesting effects. Like yesterday I was mixing the song by Yuka Port, and obviously, I mean, there was this moment of like some question response between the singer, you know, like, я тебя не люблю, я тебя люблю, and then there's like a question answer. So the second one, I was just like, okay, obviously, I'm just gonna make it sound like a telephone. Like, so I just grab an EQ and it was like, я тебя люблю, я тебя люблю. And I mean, to make interesting effects, you use equalizers for making interesting effects. So digital equalizers, they, of course, emulate the behavior of analog equalizers. So this is kind of complicated. So, I mean, it's too deep for what we need to go. This is an old slide from something I made a couple of years ago. So I'm just kind of seeing what do I need to share here with you that it's important. Yeah, this is just too much. You also can reverse a polarity. This, what it says here in a fancy way, it says like what I explained you already about copying the signal, getting it out of phase, and summing it to each other. There is a reason why, back to your, I mean, similar question to you, it's like, well, there are passive EQs, there are active EQs, and then there are digital EQs. Like, why do we use digital EQs? Well, you can build different types of EQs really easily. They have almost no noise, right? I mean, what electrical component is going there? It's just computer code. So they are noiseless. Because that's the thing that maybe you don't feel and you don't understand because you have worked too little with analog gear. But when you put two cables together, you know, there is not perfect isolation between them. Have you thought about this ever? I guess no. Like being in the metro, like, what happens if I put two cables together? I don't think that you have thought about this, but I mean, like, this cable carries some energy inside of it, and if I put another cable next to it, there is gonna be something in between them that is called crosstalk. So it's like a bit of the signal of one that jumps to the other, because these are electrons. So like, how do you contain all of this? So that's why EQs can add noise to the signal, because you cram a whole bunch of. You remember our Indian friend making an EQ the other day? We saw this video of this Indian guy making an EQ. Yeah, how can we forget it exactly? So I mean, imagine. It's not that he's a bad designer or whatever. I don't know him, and I don't want to diminish his qualities. But he was just making us an example. I mean, though he put a whole bunch of components there, crammed them all together, soldier something. So I mean, that thing, it's going to produce a result, which is like what comes out. It's not going to be just the signal. It's going to have other stuff that was added by the circuitry, by the system. So it's going to add noise. So digital EQs don't have noise because there is no crosstalk in the process of a digital EQ. So that's really cool. They have a lot of precision because you can reset and calculate it very well. You can also make analog simulations to add the warmth of an analog gear. How does it work usually? If you want to make a model of an analog, EQ, look, that's the list. Great. No, that's another lecture. That's another lecture. That happened on the same day. Yeah. So if you have a Pultec, let's say you have a Pultec. What I'm explaining you right now is like how do you make a simulation of that Pultec EQ? So you have an idea. This is going to be really cool. So you have that Pultec EQ. It has two knobs here, the bandwidth, a little switcher here, two knob mores, a little switcher here, and one more knob here, and a volume knob. So let's say that this is like in neutral position. We call it like that in sound engineering, where you haven't changed anything. So if you want to make a digital EQ, you grab an amazing, I mean, when I'm talking to you about amazing, I'm talking to you about a $10,000 stereo sound card. I mean, it's $10,000 sound card that has only 2 channels. And then you grab here, or well, in this case, it's going to be just one. And then you grab a very expensive signal generator, and then you generate 1,000 hertz. Beep. And then you run it through the system, and then you put it on a sound card. And then you see in the computer, it's like, okay, how does 1,000 hertz looks before the EQ? 1,000 hertz before the EQ looks like that. Now, you understand, because you can simulate in any computer how does 1,000 hertz looks like, right? Makes sense? And then you run it through the EQ in neutral position. So it means no effect at all. You just run it through the EQ. Now, if you are the company that is making the design for this digital EQ, you're going to have to physically get a EQP1. And you can go to a studio and rent it. You can buy it, whatever. And then you're going to run 1,000 hertz through the system, and then you're going to see, okay, now, how does 1,000 hertz looks when I run it through this system? Is it different or not? And then you can get the difference between them. And that's the effect of the EQ. And then you do this for position 1, position 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You run 1,000 hertz, check all the positions. You compare to how 1,000 hertz was before the modification. And then you grab some mathematical formulas that are really advanced, and you're going to get a digital EQ that is a modeling of that guy. Let's do something here for the sake of experimentation. I'll let you go soon. I'm almost done with my work today. Here, I'm just going to run like a couple of minutes late. Sorry, as I usually do. And I know your break is smaller now. I'm so sorry. I'm just going to try to see. Thanks, man. I'm going to try to see if we can see something. Spectrum. We said that if we want to generate a signal here. I got Pro Tools open, so let me just quickly see it in Pro Tools. But what... I don't think I have a good visualizer here. Well, I can use FabFilter for that. So look at what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a little experiment here. I'm going to run. Pro Tools has a signal generator. Avid. I forget that new Pro Tools has a search. So Pro Tools has a signal generator. Crazy there. Careful there. So that's 1,000 hertz. I'm going to mute it. We don't need to be hearing it. And so I'm going to add here Pultec EQP3, EQP1, sorry. The same EQ I've been talking about a lot. Let's see. Let's do it. Usually, let's do something here, which would be, okay, I know what I guess what I have to do. Let me just do a boost here. If I do a boost here in 30 hertz, in 100 hertz. Wait, let me do a boost in 8,000 hertz, 3,000 hertz. Let me start affecting the signal. I want to do something that affects the signal. Let me try it with I think with white noise. Yeah, that's why I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try white noise. I'm gonna try white noise. That's why. Let me just take it back to factory default. So let me just do this. I'm disappointed. I was expecting a really shocking. Like, let me try another one that may be more, because it can be frequency dependent. So it's like the more I use it, the more the harmonics are going to be revealed. That can absolutely be. Let me just try. Let me try another thing, which would be the 1073. The need 1073. I mean, it can be that if it's not engaged, nothing is happening. Need 1073. Let me see it with the need 1073. Are you gonna load? So let me just switch it off. Switch it off. Switch it on. Yeah, it's not as spectacular as I was expecting it to be. I wanted this to be really spectacular. I have never done this exercise before. Yeah, but it's no, but actually look at the output. I mean, I think that we're not visualizing it, but look at the output already. It's not engaged. It's not doing anything. Everything is in zero. Look at the level of the output. You see it? Let me do the same with the EQP one, by the way. So now when you see passive EQ, you know what it means, which is cool. So let me see it with the EQP one. Pultec, EQP 1A. Yeah, look at also the level here. I mean, it's not engaged. It's not doing anything. Now, if I switch off, you see, if I switch off a digital equalizer that is not a simulator, nothing happens to the signal, you see? But just by activating the EQP1, I'm changing the signal just by activating it. Because of the circuitry of it. Here's nothing, everything is in zero, you see? Like it's just the thing. Like I wanted to see maybe you're right, maybe white noise. Let me try like a square wave or something that has more harmonics. I don't see any significant change there. Let me try another one. The studio, do you mean the other one? The yeah, sure. I just wanted to see harmonics getting changed, like, I mean, or let me try the NIT 1073, which is a bit more aggressive. Yeah. Let's just like go back and yeah, you're right. Let's just switch it on, signal generator. Now, here's the Pro Q3. Let me just try to make a memory here. Oh, what an interesting diagram I got here. Oh. I just want to, yeah. That's how it was. Wow, you saw it. But I suspect that it was just because I switched it on. It's like the boost of switching it on. Actually, let me change the zoom level here, because I can go a bit like in a bit more detail. Wait. So this is a 30 decibel. Let me see it in a 3 decibel level. No. Oh, look at the high end. Look at the high end. Pick. That's what I wanted to see. That's what I was expecting. So you see, it's making it darker just by being there, you know. When it's off, it's more bright. And that will have big effects, I mean, because I'm sure that we're not seeing the whole picture with this visualizer. Like, I mean, I think that if we use a really pro visualizer, like, we're going to see a lot more information there. So yeah, I mean, point demonstrated. Just in case, I want to see my EQP again in this case, because I like this example. Yeah, also some changes there. You see? High end. Yeah, in there a little bit. Yeah, but also notice around here. You know what I like to the way I like to make these comparisons is with a screenshot. Let me just make a screenshot here, and actually let me take the screenshot from here, and then switch it off. So let's look at the screenshots and then we go. Okay, so what do we got? This is with the Pultec on, and this is with the Pultec off. Yeah, that's pretty significant. I mean, we're only seeing one frequency in a certain set of harmonics, but that's a pretty significant change. So yeah, EQs. Yeah. So okay, guys, thank you very much. Next week we're going to discuss dynamic EQs, and we're going to answer a really cool question. Does it matter which EQs to use? And then we're going to see legendary EQs. I'm going to tell you EQs that I like, and we will discuss your examples that you will make at home, okay? Thanks. That was really cool. Thanks. Bye.